Buonasera a tutte e a tutti e io sono davvero molto felice di questo avvio e con questo appuntamento facciamo partire questo pre-congresso, quindi è un'anteprima del nostro 51esimo congresso nazionale e io davvero ringrazio tutti i presenti e tutti i relatori. I grandi ringraziamenti li farò alla fine del nostro appuntamento di persona. Che dire, in realtà io sono molto contenta, anche molto emozionata e io, per chi insomma non mi conosce, sono Matilde Marando, la presidente di AIDP e credo che questo sia un congresso veramente straordinario. Già il titolo ci dice che in realtà verso nuovi paradigmi. E, devo dire che in particolare quello che mi affascina è proprio la prima parola, verso. Dà un'idea del cammino, dà un'idea del movimento, dà un'idea forse anche dell'incertezza, perché oggi come persone che si occupano di persone nelle organizzazioni non abbiamo moltissime certezze. C'è un'instabilità politica, c'è un'instabilità ancora legata alla pandemia, il Covid ci ha insegnato che non possiamo controllare tutto e forse è il momento anche di rivedere un po' il nostro ruolo, di essere magari un po' più concentrati sul saper fare le domande che sul cercare le risposte giuste a tutti i costi. Quindi diciamo cosa ci può essere di meglio per noi che interrogarci proprio su nuovi paradigmi e farlo attraverso 4 pilastri importantissimi della nostra professione. L'inclusione, innanzitutto. Io sono profondamente convinta che non si possa essere un buon HR senza essere fortemente connotato da questo aspetto di inclusione, direi in maniera estremamente ampia, perché l'inclusione dà il senso alla nostra professione, significa valorizzazione, significa rispetto, significa dignità delle persone che lavorano. Il secondo pilastro fondamentale che c'è nel nostro sottotitolo del congresso è sostenibilità. E proprio ieri ero insomma al Salone della Sostenibilità, se ne parla sempre e credo che sia uno strumento determinante per il nostro lavoro, essere sostenibili, trasferire questo nostro mondo professionale e non solo alle future generazioni. Credo che tutto quello che facciamo debba avere una responsabilità rispetto a questo. Il terzo paradigma fondamentale è il digitale. Il digitale è il futuro, il digitale è l'innovazione, il digitale è riuscire a mettersi in discussione, riuscire a raggiungerci anche attraverso modelli, sistemi e metodologie nuove, senza avere paura, perché la paura è un altro tema che in qualche modo ci può frenare e ci può bloccare verso invece uno sviluppo del nostro ruolo sicuramente più pieno e più completo. Il terzo punto sono le organizzazioni ibride. Ibride proprio perché complesse, perché articolate, perché variegate, perché hanno tantissime sfumature. Ecco, di tutte queste cose noi parleremo il 7 e l'8 ottobre a Bologna e io veramente non vedo l'ora di vedervi di persona. Avremo veramente un format dal mio punto di vista entusiasmante, sicuramente molto ricco e anche molto creativo. Come molto creativo, ricco non so, ma penso di sì, ma sicuramente molto creativo, è il nostro presidente del gruppo ospitante, quindi di AIDP Emilia-Romagna, che vi parlerà proprio di alcuni aspetti molto particolari che caratterizzeranno questo congresso. Prima di dare la parola a Claudio, io veramente voglio ringraziare moltissimo lui e voglio ringraziare moltissimo Elena Panzera e Jeffrey Pfeffer perché oggi sono molto onorata di questa intervista e della presenza di Jeffrey con noi perché è un punto di riferimento del panorama manageriale globale e credo che insomma ascoltarlo sarà per noi veramente illuminante. Quindi grazie, grazie a tutti voi, passo la parola a Claudio Galli. Grazie.
Bene, grazie Matilde, buon pomeriggio a tutte e a tutti. Che dire, abbiamo provato a fare un po' più fuori congresso e un po' meno congresso. Perché? Perché ci manchiamo, perché sono anni che non riusciamo a partecipare a un evento in presenza tutti assieme, perché la relazione, la cultura della relazione è uno dei nostri fondamentali, e perché ci piace moltissimo l'idea che il congresso lo fanno sicuramente i relatori. Iniziamo col botto con Jeffrey Pfeffer, ma lo fanno soprattutto quelli che partecipano, quelli che vivono il congresso, quelli che portano qualcosa di proprio e che lo condividono con gli altri. Quindi abbiamo molti spazi per noi, per raccontarci, per goderci, certamente anche per mangiare qualche tortellino. In Emilia-Romagna siamo molto orgogliosi della nostra cucina, e questo certamente c'è. Ma vorremmo dare anche qualche pizzico, un po' di cultura, di storia. La nostra Bologna, il cuore di Bologna, è futuro e medievale al tempo stesso, e noi oggi simboleggiamo un po' questo tempo, questa terra di mezzo, questo momento di passaggio verso il nuovo, in cui però abbiamo ancora un piede nell'oggi e radici anche molto molto lontane. E questo è l'essenza del cambiamento. Quindi se a Bologna andiamo all'università da 900 anni, passeggiamo in via Emilia da 2200 anni, viviamo il conflitto per trovare una soluzione e lavoriamo assieme fra pubblico e privato, ci dividiamo perché siamo conflittuali in cucina, in vigna, ma poi stiamo assieme a tavola perché ci piace trovare la soluzione, trovarla anche nel modo bello di essere e di vivere. Questo crediamo sia un bel modello di società che vorremmo fare respirare ai congressisti, anche con qualche assaggio di bene comune. Poi è un medioevo prima del Rinascimento? Certamente sì, lo crediamo con grandissima convinzione. Quindi viva IDP, grazie a tutti i partecipanti, grazie per il sold out che spero sarà battuto dal prossimo congresso solo fra pochissimi mesi, e lascio la parola a Elena Panzera, Presidente di AIDP Lombardia. Buon pomeriggio.
Buonasera a tutti. Good morning, Professor Pfeffer. I have the pleasure to introduce you today and to interview you about one of the most important topics we are discussing on the overall HR community, but also in the overall workplaces in Italy and abroad. Just a few words on your long curriculum, because we would like to introduce you properly. Jeffrey Pfeffer is a professor of organizational behavior of the graduate business school in Stanford University, where he teaches since 1979. He's the author and co-author of 16 books, including the one that is the most relevant for our today discussion, that is Dining for a Paycheck, How Modern Management Harms Employee Health and Company Performance, and What We Can Do About It. In June 2022, he published his last book, 7 Rules of Power, surprising but true advice on how to get things done and advance your career. I'm very curious to read it. Dr. Pfeffer received his business school and master's school degrees at Carnegie Mellon University and his PhD from Stanford. He began his career at the business school at the University of Illinois and then taught for 6 years at Berkeley. Dr. Pfeffer has been a visiting professor in many schools: Harvard Business School, Singapore Management University, London Business School, Copenhagen Business School, and for the past 14 years, a visitor at IESE in Barcelona. Professor Pfeffer has presented seminars in 40 countries throughout the world, as well as doing consulting and providing executive education for many companies, associations, universities in the United States. Last but not least, is one of the most important talkers, 50 Hall of Fame, and has been listed as one of the most influential HR international thinkers by the HR magazine. So you can see it's an honor for me and for every one of us having him today, and I have the pleasure to welcome you. Professor Pfeffer, our interview today is on one very important focus, how to build a culture of health in this stressful time. We all know what does it mean, especially in the last 2 years, even if your book was written before the pandemic. And this is another very interesting topic to touch. In the last 2 years, as never before, we understood how much well-being is central in our life and in our organization. And is central as well, for sure, about the people strategy. But at the same time, data tell us that even if company complains about high healthcare costs and productivity lost for sick and absent worker, on the other side, employers encourage their employees to practice a healthier lifestyle. And we are all speaking about well-being, but on the dark side of the moon, so-called dark side of the moon, we see as well that organization itself are the one causing health issues, and also we have a lot of issues in the healthcare system due to the fact of we have mobbing, burnout, and many of these diseases. This trend seems to be the opposite that it should be. So since we know all as HR that many studies you also contributed for demonstrate the strong correlation between how companies manage their people and how the companies could increase profits and productivity. So first questions for you. Why is it so important for an organization to look after the employee health, and why is not happening so far, even if it seems the right way to grow as an organization?
Well, the answer, I think, to the first question is simple. If I made you the general manager of FC Milan or any of the major soccer teams, you would immediately worry about the behavioral and physical health of your team, because you understand that the performance of your team depends upon the health, both mental and physical, of your players. Somewhere between paying a lot of attention, and this would be true if we were running racehorses, we would worry a lot about the health of the racehorses. If we made you the general manager of the Golden State Warriors or the New York Yankees, you would worry a tremendous amount about the health and well-being of your players, because you know players that are sick or players that are mentally stressed cannot do their best. Somewhere between the attention that we give to horses, to sports teams, and the absence of attention we give to the typical workplace, there is a happy medium. Obviously, the work of the company is produced by people. Decades of research have demonstrated that unhealthy people, both behaviorally and physically, and the two are related, lead to higher levels of turnover, higher levels of absenteeism, higher levels of presenteeism, and lower levels of productivity. So the connection between the health of the workforce and the performance of the organization is clear, has been known for 40 or 50 years. However, basically, most organizations, notwithstanding the availability of all of this information, notwithstanding things like the Great Resignation or silent quitting or all this other stuff that people complain about, fail to give sufficient priority to the health and well-being of their workers. There is some talk, there is almost no action. Basically, companies have prioritized efficiency, very short-term measures of efficiency. They have prioritized money over human life, and therefore humans are suffering.
This is so true, and we are seeing here in many organizations, unfortunately, the short-term view is one of the main issues we are experiencing, and the sustainable growth is the real challenge we are all in front of. The second question is, so you have described very well the situation, but what needs to change compared to the current practice you are observing in many organizations you are in contact with?
Well, I wish what needed to change was the values and perspectives of senior management. But if you parallel human sustainability with environmental sustainability, what changed people, at least in the U.S., is I think around the world, concern about the physical environment, recycling, carbon capture, solar energy, and all of those things was in fact the passage of legislation and regulation, and of course accompanied by litigation. So I think if we wait for companies to voluntarily do the right thing, we will wait for a long time. Many companies are externalizing the ill health of their employees onto the larger society. So if I work you too many hours and you get sick, you become then the responsibility of the Italian government or the Italian state. If I lay you off, you become the responsibility of the Italian government or the Italian state. If I do not give you proper support for work-family conciliation so you can take care of your family responsibilities, and that stresses you out and you cannot keep your job, you become the responsibility of the Italian government and the Italian state. So companies have, as they used to do with the physical environment, when they put their pollution into the air, water, and ground, and therefore externalize the cost to other organizations, to the society in general. And this, of course, is economically inefficient. It's not a good thing. They were then prevented from doing this by laws, by regulation, by litigation. And the same thing has to happen here. We cannot permit companies to make people sick and then wash their hands of the responsibility for having made them sick.
Yeah, so I guess what you are suggesting is we need to go through regulation in order to create some mandate for every organization, at least to start, and then act on the values the company should have to continue the journey for a healthier organization. And this is so true. Unfortunately, we used to act when we have something to be compliant of, while leaving to our wish and is much more complicated, absolutely. But for a company and for an organization who would like to start this healthier journey, can you give us some hints on how to improve employee health in practice?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is you begin with intention and prioritization. I mean, you will never build a healthy culture if you don't care about it. Just as you will never build a customer service culture if you don't care about your customers. So at first, I think, begins with a prioritization and understanding that the success of your business depends upon the health and well-being of your people, which Gallup and a bunch of other research has demonstrated many, many times. The second thing, of course, you need to do is you need to measure it. And there are, in fact, validated measures. A single item measure of self-reported health measures, prospectively predicts mortality and morbidity and the use of healthcare services. There are measures of mental and behavioral health, well validated. There are measures of the work environment. There are measures of work-family conciliation. There are measures of job control and job autonomy, which is very important for people's health. There are measures of economic insecurity, and you know whether or not you're laying people off. There's obviously measures of work hours. So you need, this needs to be measured, and someone, preferably the CEO, needs to be held accountable for these measures. And actually, I would love to see us publish these measures on a comparative basis so we can rank not only the best companies but the worst companies, which will probably be an incentive to get them to move up that list. So I would say measurement is the second thing, prioritization is the first thing, and then the third thing is to begin to build workplaces that are human-centered. So when we now design products, typewriters, cell phones, almost any product, a purse, shoes, whatever, we begin with the customer. We look at how the customer uses the product. We then design products that are customer-focused. We use a customer-focused design process in order to make the products suit the customer optimally. You can do the same thing with respect to jobs. You can have employee-centered job design. look at how the employees do their job, get rid of unnecessary tasks, automate the tasks that can be automated, help employees, give employees the tools that they need, give employees the opportunity to participate in the design of their work, which includes, by the way, their schedules. And at the end of this, if you really do employee-centered job design, you will have less burnout and less stress and less turnover.
And this is particularly true and in the last 2 years, where human-centric work design is central as well for our hybrid work. This is something special. In particular, you would like to stress on the human-centric design for us, that we are all moving to an hybrid workplace. So where we are not all together in the same place, same time, doing the same task. Is something changing, or do you think are the same principle as before?
I think the same principles apply. When people began working from home, and again, I don't know what's happened in Italy, but I doubt if it's much different than what's happened in the US. Many companies used the fact that people were working from home as an opportunity to download onto their computers software that measures their every keystroke, that software embedded in their camera, so that they are being constantly monitored through some artificial intelligence system. And so actually working at home in many instances reduced people's job autonomy rather than increasing it. Because companies, sometimes with the employees' consent, sometimes without even their knowledge, have come to monitor them extraordinarily closely, and have put a lot of productivity pressures on them, not accommodating or not taking into account the fact that oftentimes working at home means working in the presence of your children or your aged parents. You may not have space. You may be working with roommates who are also working on other jobs. And I think many companies have done a bad job, that would be giving them probably too much credit, in actually having some sympathy for and understanding of the work situations that are being faced by their employees.
This is so true. We are all, you're saying right. Italy is not, I don't think it's so much different from other countries in this challenge with all, we are all living. But we saw many times the two opposite, no? So the remote workers that are so detached from their job, or remote workers that are really always on, very stressed with the level of burnout that was even higher than before. Again, on this hybrid work environment, did you see some best practices that we can replicate, and in your experience, did work better than others?
Well, I think one of the issues with hybrid work, or one of the ideas of working at home, is that there is less of a separation between work and non-work. So people tend to work all the time, which of course is not a good thing. I mean, you know, work hours, you can look at the OECD figures, which The Economist has published. There's almost a direct correlation between the number of hours that are worked and diminishing per hour productivity. The countries that work the most hours have the worst figures on productivity. So the idea that somehow, you know, working all these hours is good for anything is a huge, it's just a myth. And so, you know, the tendency when people work at home is to have no separation between work and the rest of their life. And this is, of course, a problem.
Yeah, in fact, many studies describe it like there is no anymore the work-life balance, but we are more focused speaking about work-life harmonization, because job and life are really integrated and should be integrated with flexibility, and organizations should help employees to have flexibility as well. Coming back to your studies on the health organization practices, you are working, and you work with many organizations. If you have to list some special best practices that we can start from and that you value the most, something that is particularly well done and we can really take inspiration from.
Well, I will tell you, if you look at the source of work stress, one of the biggest sources of work stress is economic insecurity. And many companies, including in the US, who just paid huge employment bonuses to hire people, at the first sign of trouble, lay people off. Layoffs are an enormous source of stress. Layoffs have been demonstrated for decades around the world to lead to suicide, increased risks of cardiovascular disease, and increased disease and death. So the best companies like Barry Waymiller, which is a manufacturing conglomerate, companies like Southwest Airlines, which is an airline and a cyclical business, companies like SAS Institute, the largest privately owned software company in the world, do not lay people off at times of economic stringency. They understand, in the words of A.G. Lafley, the former CEO of Procter & Gamble, the best time to gain market share on your competition is, in fact, when that competition is in retreat. So I would say avoiding layoffs is a best practice. Most companies don't do it. The second best practice would be to reduce work hours. Again, the relationship between work hours and productivity has been well established. Beyond a certain point, long work hours lead to ill health, both behavioral and physical, and do not increase performance whatsoever. I think a third thing is to accommodate family obligations, to understand that people are caring for elder parents, that people have children, that people have family responsibilities, and to try to make sure that they have the time and resources to deal with those family responsibilities. And we have known for decades the importance of job control, giving people work to do, but letting them control when and how they do it, something that has eroded tremendously with all of this introduction of spyware.
Yes, you are describing a very innovative workplace for many of us who are listening to you, and for sure the inspiration is very high. But putting a little bit in our shoes, so we are an Italian HR manager, and we need to start from the beginning, maybe. No, someone are more advanced, someone should start the journey. We have, I think, in this community, we have all the awareness that this journey should start and should start now. But can you help us maybe with some advices? You need to also deal with your main stakeholder in the organization, where to start. So how I, let's say, raise the awareness in my CEO, how I raise the awareness in the board of members. Any suggestion for us that we need to at least not only believe in this, but try to have others with us in believing it?
Well, I think you used an interesting phrase, which is raise awareness. You can certainly raise awareness by having, seminars or readings or exposing people to the extensive, research literature on this. You can certainly raise people's awareness, which I think is even more effective, by having them do field trips to organizations that manage themselves in a better way. Come to California and visit Patagonia, whose owner, of course, has just turned the company over to a trust that will manage it for the benefit of the workers. Go to SAS Institute in Cary, North Carolina, spend some time there. Just a software company. Doesn't operate like a software company. It operates like a humane workplace. Go to Barry Waymiller or have Bob Chapman come and talk to you. He wrote the book Everybody Matters. I think do seminars and workshops. I think the measurement remains key. I think you'll go nowhere with just talking about this. There have to be measures, and people have to be held accountable for those measures. And I actually don't think the transition is particularly difficult. I think what is difficult is getting the seriousness of purpose. I don't see the seriousness of purpose. When people got serious about customer loyalty, they fixed it, and they fixed it quickly. They measured it, they rewarded it, they tried different programs and evaluated those programs to increase it. This is no different. When people get serious about it, what is missing now is seriousness of intent. There's a lot of virtue signaling. There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of talk substituting for action. People aren't serious.
So I should tell you, I'm the HR Vice President for SAS. So I'm honored that you mentioned my company, the one they are serious about that, because what I can tell you is that Jigwood Knight, our CEO, best sentence is my main asset. Enter in the office at 9 o'clock, at exit at the 5 o'clock. Pre-pandemic. Now we are always in a different place. But yes, I really agree on what you are saying. You need to have a purpose, and you need to have a high sponsorship from the CEO, because the sponsorship is key. Since I am from SAS, I'm passionate about people analytics and data. I think what you mentioned before about measurement is also important. Are there any analysis or data that you advise to HR to show to the board members in order to raise the awareness, apart the best practices for sure, but which type of analysis you should have as an HR to have their attention and the sense of urgency to act?
Well, Vitality in the United Kingdom does Britain's Healthiest Workplace Survey, and you can get those survey questions. They're publicly available. And by the way, the data show that the cost of low productivity coming from presenteeism has gone up 65% in the last 5 years. So, I mean, things are moving really in the wrong direction. But no, the measures are widely available. The measures of mental and physical health are widely available, and they're quite easy to implement. It's again back to the issue of intentionality and purpose. SAS, by the way, has another saying that I love, which is, if you treat people as if they make a difference to the company, they will.
They will. Yeah. Yes. I know, it's one of my favorite sentences too. Yes, and I think I guess what I can share is you need to have a systematic and organic way to listen to your people. So you need to build a listening culture in order to also raise awareness where you don't want to listen if you are a manager and if you are so stressed in the short term, but listening employees is so important, and HR should be a facilitator.
And I think the other thing that SAS does is they take this seriously. I mean, and it comes from the top. I mean, managers who do not have healthy workplaces, managers that suffer the turnover that is now typical throughout much of the industrialized world, SAS will fire those people. I mean, SAS evaluates their people on their ability to hire, develop, and retain human capital. And if you can't do that, if people are burned out, if people are leaving, SAS will then hold those managers responsible.
Yes, and many other companies are as well evaluating managers' promotion if the team is healthy. Otherwise, you are not a manager, even if you bring numbers, because you are focusing too much on the short term, but not on the sustainable growth. This is absolutely another KPI to take in consideration when we run promotions and so on. Another ADP passion is working with university and academic world, because we really believe in order to grow in the HR space, we need to learn as well from academic and from university collaboration. And we are all working in our organization on this piece. How your academic and the studies you are doing on the HR space could help HR in practice? Because I know in US you are much more advanced than us in Europe, working together, enterprise and academic world. Any advice on that, how we can work better in order to improve studying organization outside and inside?
Well, I think the advice for working together better is no different than any other advice about working together better. If you were going to collaborate with somebody at SAS, for instance, about a project, the first thing you would do is you'd want to have some level of contact with them. You would want to be able, you would get to know them, you would get to know their perspective, you would spend time learning from each other. And it would be a mutual kind of relationship building enterprise. And what I see often with respect to academic university industry collaboration is that there is insufficient sustained interaction. And, so if you're going to do knowledge transfer, you're going to have to understand each other, and you're going to have enough time together to actually transfer the knowledge.
Yes, right. And this dialogue, I think, should improve absolutely. Maybe another curiosity on our side is if you are noticed differences in treating health in the organization across cultures. So we are in the global world, and we are all working now globally. Do you see any different from US, EMEA, or Asia Pacific, for example, or the traits are common?
No, I do not see any differences. I think, to me, and I don't see much difference across industries either, it matters a lot who the leadership is, the board and the CEO and their prioritization. But you can have boards with prioritization in any industry, and you can have boards that don't take human well-being and sustainability seriously also in every industry. So you can see good and bad companies in finance, you can see good and bad companies in software, you can see good and bad companies, in retail. So I see, to me, there is not much difference, or the differences are not so much by industry or by company, but the differences are by leadership and their values, and whether or not they take seriously the idea, which is a parallel idea to the physical environment, that human beings who go to work for them and go to work with them have entrusted their well-being to that organization and to that leader. They've entrusted their psychological well-being and their physical well-being. And some leaders are good stewards of the humans who have been entrusted to them, and some are bad. Just as some leaders are good stewards of the physical environment and the physical resources that have been trusted to them, and some are bad stewards. So I think the concept of stewardship is absolutely critical. And to understand that when people come to work for and with you, and even if they don't come to work, if they're working from home, it doesn't matter. When people work with your organization, you have a responsibility to ensure that at the end of their workday, they are at least in as good shape as they were when they started.
Are you suggesting to work on the performance management process with these concepts inside?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there have to be consequences for people who, take care of their employees and those who don't. Just as, so if I said to you, Elena, we're going to make you a horse trainer, and you're going to train some Kentucky Derby horses, and the horses you trained at the end of the day all broke down and died, you would be fired as a horse trainer. I mean, it's obvious. If I said to you, we're going to make you the head of the Barca soccer team, and at the end of the quarter of the way through the season, all the players, were broken down, you of course would be fired. But we are perfectly content to have managers, wear out and burn out the people who are working for them, and do nothing with those managers. And it makes no sense.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, you're stressing again that as we are measuring other KPIs, team health and organizational health should be one of the main KPI for our managers, and starting from the top manager and top down through the organization. Absolutely.
And starting actually from the board of directors. This is a phrase that you have used, and I think that's absolutely critical. I think boards are uninformed and uninterested in many of these issues, and until they get more informed and more interested, not much is going to change.
This is as well so true. Otherwise, if you start from the bottom up, you have a ceiling, the glass ceiling that you cannot overcome if you have not the right sponsorship from the top. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Last curiosity from our side, and is what's next in your study and what we are working on that we can benefit from?
So I'm working on several things. I'm working on some papers that try to estimate the social contagion of ill health. It would not surprise you to know, we have actually published one paper with some Danish colleagues, that your health is not independent of the health of the people that you live with. You know, so health, both behavioral health and physical health, are socially influenced. It's influenced by your significant other, by your family, and so therefore the consequences of having an unhealthy employee extend beyond that employee to that employee's family. And so I'm trying to do some studies of that, and I'm also doing a book on, but it's only of interest to the U.S. because the U.S. is so screwed up. But I'm doing a book on how employers could help fix healthcare if they would take their responsibilities seriously and manage healthcare much more aggressively.
It's not only US, Professor, because there is a lot of discussion in Italy and in Europe as well about welfare, the welfare state, and we have for sure the government welfare, but then main part of the welfare is also on, let's say, organizational shoulders, because we really need to work on the well-being of our people, because the government welfare is not enough. So I don't think it's unpopular or less important outside US. So it would be also a good benchmark to read this study throughout the different regions. Absolutely. So I will be humble and try to summarize what we discussed with you today, but correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm missing anything important. So what my key takeaways of this very interesting discussion are that first, absolutely, we need to start with the big picture in mind and be strategic. Think not only short term, but long term, and this is the first point. The short-term view is the opposite of a sustainable growth. So we can win 1 year, we can achieve our numbers 1 year, and then the organization will be less healthy than before because we stress the people too much. Second lesson learned is starting from the top. Otherwise, you cannot have an organic and holistic health organization. And having, a data-driven approach in order to measure and set the right KPIs, I guess, in all HR processes, starting from recruiting and then performance management and compensation and so on, taking in consideration that you have an asset and you need to take care about this asset that is the most important asset for a company. You also suggested that a real change should be done through regulations first, in order to make a disruption in this, let's say, in this world that only with the wish is too long to achieve, or is too long to realize that it's too late to act properly. And then we really like, as ADP, the concept of human-centric organization, and all the Congress we will have in Bologna is about that. So how to build an organization that see the people in the center. But when we say people in their unicity, more than diversity is unicity. And so you need to know them, you need to treat them as customers. And you mentioned as well, our employees are our customers. So we really need to know them and to understand how to deal with every one of them. And I like as well the concept of working together with university in order to bring the two view, the organizational view and the academic view, in order to learn together and to have these synergies that many times are not so strong and we need to build strategically. So any final recommendation or any final thoughts from your side?
Nope, I think you did a great job summarizing. Thank you so much.
Because you were so clear and inspirational, that was easy for me. But Professor Pfeffer, thank you very much to being with us. It was a real pleasure. I think we have many fruits for our thoughts this night, and the days after we will have let's say some area where we will discuss as well in Bologna all together. I would like to give the stage again to Matilde and Claudio for a final remark, and thank you again. I hope to welcoming you in Italy in person next time.
Grazie davvero professor Pfeffer, grazie ad Elena, è stato un'intervista fonte di grande ispirazione. Abbiamo tantissime cose da fare e diciamo dopo avervi ascoltato io personalmente ne sono ancora più consapevole, quindi abbiamo veramente da intraprendere una strada che sicuramente è impegnativa, sicuramente ci vorrà del tempo, ma è anche indispensabile, ecco, per cambiare un po' il volto delle persone che si occupano di persone e delle aziende di conseguenza. Quindi credo veramente che sia stato un momento determinante, ecco, per lo sviluppo di chi si occupa di persone. Quindi veramente grazie professor Pfeffer, grazie ad Elena e esco diciamo molto arricchita da questo incontro e quindi vi ringrazio davvero. Claudio, vuoi aggiungere qualcosa?
No, solo grazie. Just thank you. Excellent. Nice summary, very, very good. We have food for thought.
And arrivederci a Bologna.
Grazie davvero. Noi ci vediamo il 29 settembre con un altro momento di pre-congresso, un'altra intervista molto interessante, sempre alla stessa ora, e poi a Bologna naturalmente 7-8 ottobre. Grazie davvero, viva IDP!
Grazie a voi, viva IDP!
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.